Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Wednesday's edition of Alaska Weather, 5th day of January 2022. I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got on the, let's see what comes up, hazardous weather graphic. There's a wind chill advisory, or actually, let's go with the up on the Arctic coast over there, Kaktovik, Barter Island. Blizzard warning out for 50-mile-an-hour west winds, gusting to 50 miles an hour, creating whiteout conditions at times. That's through tonight into Thursday. And to the west, their eastern Arctic coast, winter weather advisory for conditions not as bad. Lighter winds, 30 to 40 miles an hour out of the west, slowly diminishing late tonight into tomorrow with visibilities less than a half mile at times and blowing snow. And then the other red shaded area, the eastern interior, especially along the Yukon River near Eagle, and also Delta Junction under the influence of a wind chill warning for wind chills of 60 to 75 degrees below zero for tonight into through Thursday morning. And then there's a wind chill advisory out for Thompson Pass for tonight for wind chills to, let's see, 50 degrees below zero. And also for the Northern Panhandle, wind chill advisories out tonight in through Thursday morning for wind chills anywhere from 25 to 35 degrees below zero, greater Juneau area on up Klondike Highway, Haines up to Skagway with those gusty north winds, especially over the long Lynn Canal there and the northern inner channels. And from there, going to satellite imagery. Pretty tight little storm there rolling up toward Atka Island. That brought pretty good wind gusts as high as 80 miles an hour to Nikolsky there in advance of the frontal boundary associated with it. Otherwise, Adak and Atka seeing gusts 50 to 55 miles an hour. And then Unalaska seeing wind gusts close to 70 miles an hour earlier today, and 50 to 55 mile an hour winds as far east as Cold Bay. And that's easterly flow across the Gulf of Alaska, and the cold air bringing snow to Kodiak Island, Middleton Island, picking up about 2/100 of an inch of light snow today, and wet snow falling Kodiak, 34 degrees, the air temperature at the state airport there. So any elevation at all, and seeing some light snow. But the cold, dry air over the Panhandle continues. You can see some moisture sliding up across Norton Sound toward the southeast coast. But really, that's just mid and high level clouds. Otherwise, very strong high pressure over the Yukon, 1,055 millibars, keeping the outflow winds going over the northern Panhandle and the eastern North Gulf Coast. Pretty tight gradient over the eastern interior, supporting that wind chill warning out, with winds gusting anywhere up to about 40 miles an hour around Delta Junction today, and Eagle seeing gusts of 35 miles an hour, temperature about 25 below zero. That puts the wind chills pretty low. And then the trough approaching the eastern Arctic coast, kicking those winds up, gusting up to about 50 miles an hour. Actually, Barter Island had peak wind gusts 58 miles an hour, almost 60 miles an hour there. Whiteout conditions, snow, blowing snow. And new snow should fall there, and that'll keep the blizzard warning out, reducing visibilities to, again, zero at times in some areas there through the night and into early tomorrow. And then conditions should start to slowly improve throughout tomorrow afternoon, especially into tomorrow evening. Otherwise, look for snow, Kodiak Island, light snow amounts. Some of that might slip up into the southern Kenai Peninsula there. Possibly. Whatever it does will be quite light, generally just an increase in the clouds. Stays cold and windy over the Panhandle, with some areas falling below zero in the wind sheltered areas tonight. Periods of rain for the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, and periods of rain also for the Adak-Atka area, but less wind, with areas of rain extending back toward almost the Komodorsky Islands. Clear and cold in interior Alaska, anywhere from 35 to 45 below again tonight. Coldest in the wind-free areas and cloud-free areas, of course. And moving on to the day for tomorrow, not much change, still clear and cold, but less wind, still snow-blowing snow, especially early on for the eastern Arctic coast. Band of light snow into the North Slope, maybe the Brooks Range, but that'll be quite light. Don't look for much in the way of any accumulations with that. The heavier snow will be off into Northwest Territories there, Mackenzie River Delta, and over toward the Great Slave Lake. Otherwise, cold high pressure holds over the Yukon, and still a pretty good gradient keeps the winds blowing across much of the southeast coast. It'll be dry, maybe some variable clouds over the southern panhandle, but all the moisture staying now even south of Dixon Entrance with that low center south of the Queen Charlotte Islands. Most of all the snow will be in British Columbia. And still southeast flow, rain and snow Kodiak Island, maybe some light snow as far north as Augustine Island, but that should miss the Kenai Peninsula. Just look for some possible variable clouds across Cook Inlet and from, say, Kenai over to Seward and Homer to Seldovia. It may become mostly cloudy. Otherwise, a chance of moisture just grazing the Pribilof Island, staying mostly to the south of that low pressure area, slowly weakening there just north of the central Aleutians, and just some scattered shower activity for the Fox Islands. And then for the day Thursday, again, proving, especially in the afternoon for the eastern Arctic coast, you lose the blizzard warning then. And the wind chill warning will probably end for the eastern interior as well as the winds diminish. You can see a lot fewer lines there than what we have today and tonight. Stays breezy over the panhandle and cold and dry with, again, all the snow off into the east and southeast of the area there in British Columbia. And that trough pretty much dry there off the coast. Chance of showers, Kodiak Island, amounts will be quite light, and remnants of that frontal boundary keeps it unsettled over the Alaska Peninsula. A few scattered showers on Unalaska Island, but dry for Windmack Island, maybe some clearing there. Periods of light rain at times for the Pribilofs, and another system pushing some moisture up toward Adak and Atka, increasing the chance of rain tomorrow afternoon. Also an increase in the winds there, possibly reaching gale force, especially in the gusts, but light winds for the north slope and interior under Arctic high pressure. And for the day on Friday, not much change except high pressure center stays over the north slope and the one weakens over the Yukon. The pressures fall in the Gulf of Alaska, and so that tightens the gradient up once again over the Copper River Basin, Upper Tanana Valley, 40 Mile Country, as well as Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Northern Panhandle, kind of keeping those cold outflow winds going there from the north, but increasing moisture along the central and south coast. Probably a chance of snow there in the afternoon. Dry for the Alaska Peninsula, risk of showers for Sand Point, chance of showers for the eastern Aleutians around Dutch Harbor, Nikolsky, as well as Adak and Atka, kind of just unsettled and showery with rainfall all the way out to Chimay-Attu, and it looks like it'll probably miss the Pribilofs with continued easterly flow there as it stays pretty dry over the northern Bering Sea and cold. Interior Alaska again staying below zero. Lows tonight anywhere from 35 to 45 below, maybe lower 50s, again below zero. Tok, Northway, Chicken once again. 48 below mid-afternoon temperature at Chicken, so it wouldn't take only a couple of degrees away from minus 50 currently. Below zero, northern Panhandle down to about Wrangell, otherwise single numbers and teens. Upper 20s, Kodiak Island for your lows, and then lower to mid-30s for the Alaska Peninsula, mid-30s in the Aleutians, and just near 30 for the Pribilofs, followed by highs for the afternoon on Thursday, anywhere from 0 to 10 below for the Arctic coast, and highs in the interior, 20 to 30 below central interior, and single numbers, south central Alaska, south of the Alaska Range, but staying well below zero in the Copper River Basin. Most areas minus 20, the forecast high for Golcana. Single numbers out along the southwest coast, Seward Peninsula, 3 at Tin City, 6 at Gamble, mid-30s for the Pribilofs, lower 40s, Adak and Atka, as well as on Alaska, Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s to lower 40s, and right around the frost point for Kodiak Island. And highs, single numbers, northern Panhandle, lower 20s, down toward Dixon Entrance. And then the lows Friday morning, anywhere from 25 to 35 below, a little milder, forecast anyway, for the eastern interior, down to close to 40 below once again around Golcana, Glen Ellen area, and 15 to 25 below for the Arctic coast, anywhere from 5 below to 5 above for the western coastal areas, all the way down to staying below zero for Bristol Bay. Lower 20s Kodiak Island, and lower to mid 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s for the central and western Aleutians, and below zero for Skagway to single numbers and teens elsewhere, Sitka at about 20. And then the highs for Friday afternoon, again below zero north and west of the Alaska Range, except 5 to 15 or 5 to 10 more or less for Bristol Bay near freezing Kodiak Island, 35 to 40 Alaska Peninsula, and in the teens and 20s for the Panhandle, and maybe pushing above 20 below zero for the Copper River Basin, single numbers again South Central Alaska, but milder around Homer, Seldovia up to about 15. Nome, maybe 8 degrees, 6 degrees Savunga, up to 33 for the Pribilofs, and lower 40s Adak and Atka.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
First line weather graphic, IFR. There in the North Slope, marginal VFR for the Arctic coast. VFR south of the Brooks Range, all the way to Bristol Bay and to the Barren Islands. Pick up some marginal VFR there with IFR, Fognet, Kodiak Island, Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. IFR pushing into the western Aleutians to about Amchitka by tomorrow morning. Otherwise, VFR, Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, all of the Panhandle. And for the afternoon, Thursday, marginal VFR, Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, VFR south of the Brooks Range, again to the southern Cook Inlet area, and now for the Barren Islands, improving for Kodiak, marginal VFR, but still lingering IFR, southern part of the island, Sitkinak, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, and the southern Bering Sea and Aleutians, marginal VFR, northward to about the Pribilofs, VFR northern Bering Sea, interior Alaska, and the Panhandle. And for Friday morning, marginal VFR, Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, and also over toward the eastern border, northeast Copper River Basin, otherwise VFR, Gulf of Alaska, and northern Kodiak Island, northern Bering Sea, marginal VFR, Pribilofs to the Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula, and some more IFR showing up, Adak, Atka, westward to Amchitka. And some marginal VFR now right along the central and south coast of the Panhandle, otherwise VFR. Friday afternoon, marginal VFR pushes inland into the inside waters of the Panhandle, especially down toward the south, toward Dixon Entrance. Marginal VFR right up along the coastline now, hugging the coastline, the eastern North Gulf Coast, Cape St. Elias to Yakutat, Dolphin Cove, VFR interior Alaska, Brooks Range on out to the central and eastern Arctic coast, looks IFR, and IFR for the Fox Islands and Shimmy and Attu, otherwise marginal VFR, central Aleutians, north to the Pribilofs, and VFR, northern Bering Sea to the Chukchi Sea. Passes possible marginal VFR northern entrance of both Anatuvik and Adigan, otherwise VFR. And for the western Alaska Range, another VFR day for Lake Clark, Merrill, rainy, windy VFR as well. And Isabel and Mentesta, good VFR flying for both those passes. Tanita, VFR, and Portage, VFR. Chilcoot and White, VFR. And for the freezing levels at the surface there, right up with that easterly flow, right up on the east side of Kodiak Island for tomorrow morning, and then they'll probably just lift north of the island by the afternoon. Otherwise, cutting across the Alaska Peninsula just south of St. Paul Island, so putting it right near St. George, and north of the Aleutians. Otherwise, 2,000 feet, almost up to Sand Point, not quite, and just barely reaching the southern Queen Charlotte Islands. And for the icing, areas of possible isolated moderate icing, just a slight threat there from the western Arctic coast, southeastward across the Brooks Range, upper Yukon Valley, into the mid and upper Tanana Valley, northern Copper River Basin. Otherwise, that area of icing not making it much farther north than Dixon Entrance, there south of the Panhandle. And then some icing Kodiak Island extending westward, southern Bering Sea, Pribilofs, Alaska Peninsula, most of the Aleutians. Again, just very isolated as far as moderate goes. And for the jet stream, upper level high there over the Russian Far East, so northerlies, 130 knots coming into the eastern Arctic coast across the eastern Brooks Range, turning east-southeast 80 to 95 knots, northern Bering Sea. And at 9,000 feet, high pressure right around Shelikof Strait, northeast Bristol Bay. So pretty light wind flow from the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, North Gulf Coast, and Panhandle. Northerlies up to 50 knots, though, coming across the east central Brooks Range, and then easterlies 40 to 50 knots over the northern Bering Sea. And at 3,000 feet, 50 to 60 knot winds, east-southeasterly, central and northwest Bering Sea there. Much lighter down toward the central and western Aleutians. and then southeast 35 knots coming across the Aleutian Range into Bristol Bay. And northeast winds not too strong up over the northern interior, light and variable southern Alaska, and lighter winds for the Panhandle. And from there, taking a look at the turbulence, eastern Arctic coast, North Slope Brooks Range, a little bumpy there, considerable moderate possible, otherwise light to isolated moderate. And also the North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, especially the Coast Range into the Panhandle, enough remaining gradient there, outflow winds for some.
We have a big solar flare coming in, so we're out here on an aurora hunt. It's a CME, it's a dynamite, coronal mass ejection. It's when the sun, it kicks off energy and these explosions that are larger than the Earth, explosion type things coming off of sunspots. And if that energy is pointing straight at the Earth, it gets caught up in our magnetic field, and that energy, electrons, come down our magnetic field, collide with oxygen up there about 50 or a couple hundred miles high, and that's what generates the northern lights. My job as the photographer and the aurora hunter is to be in position, you know, location, location, location. And I like to think I'm composing. Mother Nature, it's a bit of a teamwork thing, you know, she's got to put on the show, but I have to be in the right position and of course with the right tools and the know-how. I've stopped keeping track of how much time I spend out here in terms of hours. It's more in terms of weeks or months, or at this point years now. You know, it was always in me. Even when I was a kid growing up in the lower 48, I would spend nights sleeping on our trampoline, just staring at the stars. I'm in 4th grade and I'm going, wow, look at those stars. And I'd see how many nights in a row I could sleep on the trampoline. And I think my record was 23 nights in a row. So I was doing kind of strange things for an Iowa country boy. I can remember specifically the very first time I saw the Northern Lights. It was 1989, the peak of the solar cycle, and I was going to graduate school in Laramie, Wyoming. And all of a sudden we had heard the Northern Lights were out. It's like, what are those? I'd never really seen them before. And my goodness gracious, we were on top of a mountain in the Laramie Range and they were turning blood red. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And the very first picture I took, that was 1990. Now, an old film camera, Pentax K1000 on a plastic Kmart tripod. Took 2 shots on slide film and got them back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this beautiful green thing swirling about. And from that moment, I was hooked. When I realized that you could preserve the auroras on film, I just experimented a ton. I'd had a heaping stack of slides, the no good ones. The experiments gone wrong, you know, too dark, fuzzy, out of focus, too light. I had this huge garbage can full of excess slide film, and that was just the learning curve. Well, when I go out here, it's all about getting the shot. And my wife and I, we've called it the hero shot. But the hero shot is the one where you just come home and you go, look at this. And everyone goes, wow, and you feel like a hero. It's a wonderful feeling, you know. It's good for the ego, of course. It's good for the business. But if you kind of strip that away, it's good for what's inside you, because that's really the hero moment in nature. And Mother Nature's putting on this show that is just mind-blowing. It's unbelievable. When I first resigned from my day job, that was in 1996, and decided I wanted to become a full-time aurora hunter, my goal from that moment and to this day still is to get 1 hero shot a year. I figured, and I'm talking the kind that somebody wants to buy from you and hang on their wall, where the auroras are extremely bright, very active, turning colors, where you can't believe your eyes. If you get to preserve a little sample of that with a photograph, well, it's what we call the hero shot. Wow, what a feeling. I mean, oh, you're elevated, levitating, you are lifted up. Your spirits are so high that I love that feeling. And I think I get that so much from seeing cool things in nature that I will go way out of my way to find that. And I can, you know, the next day, well, I'll be just laying there thinking about it and thinking how lucky I was, or how fortunate. Of course, I just, you know, spent 2 weeks sitting there staring at the sky and not seeing anything. So you got to remember that, you know, luck is kind of a relative term, but I still just feel incredibly lucky to be even in a position to where I could have been there, taken a photograph of it, and just mainly experienced it. Well, that feeling could last for days.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at storm force northerly gusts for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, northern inner channels with gale warnings for the day Thursday. Seas up to 7 feet. Brusque wind or small craft advisories for the Stevens Passage area. Central inside waters north at 25. Clarence Strait north at 15. Small craft advisories for the south coast. North winds 25 knots. North coast northwest at 20 knots. Seas 7 to 8 feet. And for the day on Friday, there we go. Gale warnings continue. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, north winds 35 knots. Stevens Passage, small craft advisories north at 25, but southeast for Clarence Strait at 15 knots with 4-foot seas. South coast looking southwest for the day Friday at 20 knots. Central coast easterlies 25 to 35 knots. And the north coast winds will be out of the east at 30 knots. Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, tomorrow, Thursday, north at 10, but small craft advisory, southern Cook Inlet, north 25, northeast 25, Kamishak Bay, west winds 25 knots for the Barren Islands, western North Gulf Coast. Over toward Middleton Island, look for northwest winds at 25, gusting 50 knots. Prince William Sound, northwest 20 with 3-foot seas. And for Friday, swing those winds around to the northeast for Prince William Sound at 20 knots, seas around 4 feet. East winds 30 knots there for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Northeast 25 there, western North Gulf Coast, 8-foot seas. Small craft advisory Barren Islands, north at 25. And 30-knot winds out of the north and northeast for southern Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay, but north of Forelands, north of 15. Kodiak Island, east-northeast winds, 30 knots with 8 to 13-foot seas for the day Thursday. And gale warnings for the Pacific side, or the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, east 35 knots, 20-knot winds there on the Pacific side from Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev, Bristol Bay. Brisk wind advisories, northeast winds 30 knots. That holds through Friday there for Bristol Bay, no change. And gale warnings for the Alaska Peninsula, east-northeast 35 knots, east 30 knots for Castle Cape to Sitkinak. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, northeast winds 25 knots. On Alaska Island, southeast winds 20 to 25 knots for the day Thursday, with east winds 30 to 35 knots for Mac Island. Adak and Atka, east-southeast 30 to 35 knots, southeast 20 for Amchitka Island, and Kiska to Shimia, northeast winds 35 knots, 22-foot seas. And for Friday, Shimia to Kiska, northeast at 30, and for Amchitka, east at 30, northeast 25 to 30 knots for Adak and Atka. Gale warnings for the Fox Islands, northeast winds 35 to 40 knots with 14 to 17-foot seas. And for the southwest coast, we've got gale warnings south of Nunivak Island there for northeast winds at 35 knots. Otherwise, east 40 knots for gale warnings for St. Paul, St. George Island, 16-foot seas there. St. Matthew Island, east at 30 knots, seas 14 feet. And brisk wind advisories for St. Lawrence Island, northeast winds 25 knots, only 15 knots in Norton Sound. But those will increase to 25 knots there for the sound on Friday out of the northeast. Northeast winds 30 knots, St. Lawrence Island, all of the southwest coast, and then good gales for St. Paul, St. George, St. Matthew Island. North winds 40 knots, 14 to 18-foot seas. Eastern Arctic coast brisk wind advisories, winds slowly coming down to 30 knots out of the west, otherwise northwest 15 to 20 knots for the central coast, and 15-knot north to northeast winds from Wales to Cape Beaufort. And then brisk wind advisories, Wales to Cape Thompson on Friday, north winds 25 knots. And generally north winds for the Arctic coast at about 15 knots, except over toward Kaktovik, Barter Island, Demarcation Point. They'll be out of the west at 25, so continuing to slowly diminish, but they're not going to end completely. And for tonight, blizzard warning continues tonight for the eastern Arctic coast there, Barter Island especially. And but clear and cold over the interior. Wind chill warning tonight for the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country. 75 degrees below zero expected there. And wind chill advisory for the Juneau area and along the Klondike Highway. Wind chills to 40 degrees below zero with lighter winds over interior Alaska, allowing temperatures to fall back in that 35 to 50 degree below zero range. And then for the day tomorrow, washed out front keeps showers of rain or snow over the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, possibly Kodiak Island. Another weak system increases the chance of rain, Adak and Atka late in the day, otherwise clear and cold interior Alaska with less wind, especially over the Panhandle. And then wind gradient starts to tighten up a little.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.